Making a 4D game is a lot of work, and I know that from experience. 4D Minor is a sandbox game with 4 spatial dimensions, and I've been working on it for a few years now. If you don't know anything about 4D space, don't worry. You won't need to watch anything else to be able to understand pretty much everything in this video. Before I cover anything else, let's take a quick look at the biggest feature I've added to the game recently, 4D liquids. Here I have a bucket of water, and I'm just going to pour it out right here on this block of stone. At first glance, everything looks pretty normal, but after a few seconds, you'll probably notice that the water somehow appears to be flowing right through this wall, as if it wasn't even there. To explain what's going on here, let's take a quick look at what a 2D creature might see if they were watching water flow in a 3D world. This is Frank the Forg, a longtime friend of the channel. He's a 2D creature, but he has the unique ability to explore a 2D slice of a 3D world, and he can rotate that slice to explore everything around him in 3D space. This is a lot like how you can rotate your own 3D slice of a 4D world in 4D Minor. Now if Frank stands on one side of a wall, while his friend Fernanda pours out a bucket of water on the other side, he might see something similar to what we saw earlier. To him, it looks like the water is flowing right through this stone wall. Let's rewind a bit and take a look at what's actually happening in 3D. As you can see, the water's really just taking the path of least resistance and flowing around the wall, behaving a lot like water would in real life. That's exactly what's happening in 4D Minor, but since the water is 4D and we are only 3D, it might be confusing at first. Since Frank can rotate his 2D slice of the world, he can eventually figure out exactly how the water is getting to the other side of the wall, and the same is true in 4D Minor. Now you might have noticed that the flowing liquid animations look a lot fancier than the ones in most other sandbox games. These were actually a huge pain to implement, even if you ignore the fact that they are all fully 4D. More on that later. Along with water, as you might have guessed, there is also now flowing lava. Before, lava was just a flat texture that covered the void at the bottom of the world, but now it has flowing mechanics similar to water, but much slower. When lava touches water, it cools rapidly and becomes stone. Lava serves as the most dangerous 4D obstacle in the game to date. Not only does it show up in the new volcano biome, but it can also be found in underground pockets, which makes mining a lot more dangerous. If you thought 3D lava was threatening, imagine lava flowing towards you from the 4th dimension. You might not know it's coming until it's too late, so be careful. With liquids in the game now, there obviously have to be bodies of water. There is now an ocean biome, as well as a much rarer oasis biome which can be found in deserts. The ocean is home to the game's first aquatic creature, the jellyfish. The model for the jellyfish is a new shape that hasn't been seen in 4D Minor before, and the people in the 4D Minor Discord server were actually able to quickly identify it as the Great Prismata Tetracontactocoron, or the Gibic. I think I'm just going to call it that. The jellyfish is a bit dangerous, and can take away half of your health with just a single sting. Like any other 4D creature in the game, they can always be hiding in the 4th dimension, just outside of your 3D slice of the world. Whenever you're swimming in the ocean, I would highly recommend wearing the 4D glasses, which allow you to see projections of entities that are hiding in the 4th dimension before it's too late. Another major new feature in the game is slabs, which are like normal 4D blocks, but half as tall. As you can see, they are all oriented horizontally, but I'm actually doing a poll right now on Patreon to decide if I should add vertical slabs to the game as well. You can turn a pretty decent variety of block types into slabs, including ice, glass, and grass. You can also combine slabs to turn them back into regular blocks if you want. The next thing I want to talk about is the sheer size of 4D Minor worlds. 4D Minor's code for handling in-game coordinates has received a massive upgrade, and now I think it's safe to say that 4D Minor has by far the largest worlds out of every game. For comparison, let's look at the sizes of worlds in some of the most popular sandbox games. Dwarf Fortress, which is one of the games that inspired Minecraft, has an estimated world size of about 39,000 square kilometers. This is roughly the size of Switzerland, and about 65% larger than the planets in No Man's Sky, a game which we'll talk about in a little bit. Next we have Minecraft, which is probably the most talked about game when it comes to world sizes. Minecraft worlds are about 3.6 billion square kilometers, which is just over 7 times the surface area of the Earth. This still doesn't even come close to the size of 4D Minor worlds though, even if you ignore the game's 4th spatial dimension. No Man's Sky is a serious contender for the game with the largest world size, or I guess I should say, largest universe size. No Man's Sky is a game that allows you to explore over 18 quintillion planets across many different galaxies. Now the entirety of those galaxies isn't actually modeled in-game, but the surfaces of all of their planets are, and they actually are fully explorable. In order to show you just how big No Man's Sky really is, let's first take a quick trip through our solar system, starting at the Sun, to put things into perspective. You can see the planets quickly disappearing as we fly past them at dozens of times the speed of light. Now that we've reached Mars, we're going to have to accelerate to hundreds of times the speed of light, because the planets out here are much farther apart. This visual of the solar system is one of the few on YouTube that has all of the planets' sizes, as well as their distances from the Sun, all to scale. It's probably worth noting that we can only see these planets, even if for just a brief moment, because I made sure they were all perfectly aligned, and because I used a very zoomed in virtual camera to make this visual. Now that we've finally reached Pluto, which is so far away that it takes over 5 hours for light to reach it from the Sun, I can finally show just how big No Man's Sky really is. The largest planets in No Man's Sky are actually pretty small compared to Pluto, which is considered to be a dwarf planet. We didn't fly all the way to Pluto just to show how small the planets in No Man's Sky are though. This is the distance between Pluto and the Sun. And this ginormous square represents the combined surface area of all of No Man's Sky's 18 quintillion different planets. We still have a ways to go before we get to the size of 4D Minor worlds though. And as big as No Man's Sky is, it only reaches about 0.1% of the distance to the closest neighboring star system. Corridor Crew recently made a pretty great video illustrating the size of Minecraft worlds, and they argued that Minecraft is much larger than just 7 times the Earth's surface area, because there are over 18 quintillion possible world seeds. The number of possible worlds in Minecraft is the same as the number of planets in No Man's Sky, and that's because they both use 64-bit numbers for their terrain generation seeds. In their video, Corridor Crew did exactly the same thing with Minecraft worlds that we just did with No Man's Sky's planets, giving them a square area that's about 27 light years across. The No Man's Sky square only made it about 0.1% of the way to the closest neighboring star system, but this square would actually extend beyond the distance to 33 of our closest neighboring stars, if centered around our own sun. Now we can finally talk about the size of one 4D Minor world. A single world in 4D Minor is now over 15,000 light years across, and about 18% of the diameter of the Milky Way galaxy. The 4D Minor world square has over 33 million times the area of the Minecraft square. You can't even see the Minecraft square at this galactic scale. And if you've really been paying attention, you've probably realized that this is comparing apples to oranges. Not just because the 4D Minor square is the size of only one 4D Minor world, while the Minecraft square is the size of all 18 quintillion Minecraft worlds combined, but also because 4D Minor worlds are 4D, while Minecraft worlds are only 3D. This means that 4D Minor worlds don't have surface area, they have surface volume, giving the surface of a 4D Minor world the shape of a cube that extends far beyond the Milky Way's galactic plane. In fact, if you squash this cube into the shape of a pancake while preserving its volume, it would be able to cover an area of space that contains the majority of the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And just like Minecraft and No Man's Sky, 40 Miners world seeds are... hold on a second. 40 Miners world seeds are also 64-bit numbers, which means that there are over 18 quintillion possible 40 Miner worlds. The volume of one 40 Miner world's surface is 3.8 trillion cubic light years, and the combined volume of all possible 40 Miner worlds is over 70 nonillion cubic light years, which is about 17% of the volume of the observable universe. I guess that means there's still a lot of room for improvement, but we can save that for another day. Honestly, this world size is just a bit too big to be useful. You'll never be able to actually walk to the edge of the world. It would take light just a fifth of a second to travel across an entire Minecraft world, but it would take light over 15,000 years to travel all the way across a single 40 Miner world. You might be wondering, what's even at the edge of a 40 Miner world? That's a great question. Once you get to the very edge of the world, it just keeps going. The compass is an item that allows you to keep track of your position and orientation in 4D space. Without a compass, you would never be able to tell how close you are to the edge of the world, which is about 74 quintillion blocks from the world's center. If you walk past the supposed edge of the world while looking at your 4D coordinates, you'll notice that at least one of your coordinate values will flip from positive to negative, or vice versa. That's not a bug. The edge of the world in 4D Miner will always loop back to the opposite side of the world. If you walk in a straight line for long enough, you'll eventually end up right back where you started. Not that this is possible for anyone to actually do though. If you're wondering what the point of making worlds this big is, it was actually just the result of a bug fix. A bug fix that may have been a bit overkill. Before this fix, the game would start to break down at distances from the world center that you could actually walk to. I don't think that will be a problem ever again. The only problem that still remains at far out distances is the terrain generation. The edge of the world seems fine, but some of the patrons have found large sections of the world over 1 trillion blocks from the world's center that are completely flat. There might be some other weird terrain generation bugs at very specific distances, kind of like the glitched areas in older versions of Minecraft known as the Far Lands, but as far as I know, no one has really looked. I've probably spent way too much time talking about the world size, so let's talk more about the features you can actually enjoy within these massive 4D worlds. One of the biggest things that's improved a lot since my last devlog is mod support. While I've done quite a bit to make 4D Miner easier to create mods for, I am by no means the person who is most responsible for 4D Miner's improved modding support. That title belongs to someone known as Triangle. The mod I'm most excited about is the new VR mod.
Hey, you guys can't get me. We're a bunch of losers. Alright.
That's right, you can now experience the largest 4D sandbox in VR. The new 4D liquids, the revamped world size, and the other cool new features, some of which I haven't even talked about yet, are all accessible right now through my Patreon, but the new modding support is actually available right now in the free demo, as well as everything from my previous video besides multiplayer. This VR mod gives you an enhanced experience for pretty much every aspect of the game, including the tutorial, which helps you to understand 4D space with the help of Frank the Forg, who we met earlier. The controls are specifically designed to make movement in 4D as easy as possible. Even the skin choosing menu looks much cooler with this mod. Here's some footage of someone playing with the new VR mod.
Yeah, try to get a stake, so you gotta destroy a bush.
Alright, let's...
Target spotted! Look for like one of those blue bushes.
Oh. How do I...
Click on it or hit it.
And then...
So look on your left arm, on your wrist.
Oh, that's so cool! Find it.
Okay, so
there
now,
we go.
So now when a spider shows up, try to hit it.
Alright, hold on, I gotta... Alright, let me... This guy's bruising for a cruising.
Yeah, good.
Get wrecked, idiot. Alright, let's see here. I'm gonna get some wood.
Some wooden. You need to get a rock first. You need to make a hammer.
Alright.
Perfect stone. Alright.
Do I just like...
Oh, you need hyper. Oh, you have hyper soak. Or maybe...
No! My rock! Dude, okay, hold on. Let me... Alright, I got my rock back.
You gotta click on it.
With what? Oh, there we go. Alright. Oh, yeah. Alright. So now I can break trees?
Oh, yeah.
Over like.
Alright.
Try to get iron before you die.
How do I
The
scroll?
right stick is.
Oh, there we
first,
go.
right?
It's the right stick. Ah!
Okay.
This is so weird.
See any iron?
Ooh, there's some urn. Come back. Alright, so, Get out of here. Ooh, wait, no, that's some spooky ore. Yeah, that's too hard to get. Hold on, can I do some hardcore parkour? Where'd it go? Is that it? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Don't die.
Oh. Voiced by yours true.
That is true.
Yeah.
I like this little nook.
You're a nook.
Oh. Alright, let's
I'm sure you could make a pick.
let's find out. Alright, let's find out how to get back in my inventory. Alright, there we go.
So how much iron do you have? Do you have any
have
normal
3.
wood?
No, I gotta go get some.
Or hopefully you can get out of here.
Worst case scenario, you can jump in the lava and respawn.
No, I'm gonna take you up on that offer. Oh, there we go. Whee! Oh no, I perished.
Unperishing.
Alright, let's get some regular wood. Is there fall? No, there's not fall damage. I did it, guys.
You did?
I got a pickaxe.
Oh
No
yeah.
way.
Alright, look at that. It's all 4D and such. Alright. Let's go find a... Ooh, conveniently placed cave. God, wait. What an idiot.
Get rigged.
Now, I can make the 40 glasses. I can't tell. Yo!
You don't.
Whoa, would you look at that?
You can see all the butterflies.
3D pog.
What do you mean? 40 pog?
Maybe. What is that? Oh, it's just a... Oh, it's a spider in another dimension. Okay.
This VR mod doesn't currently support the latest versions of 4D Miner, but that will likely change not too long after this video is uploaded. The VR mod does currently work on the version of the game used in 4D4T, the oldest Anarchy server in 4D Miner. Going back to the new content that I've been adding to 4D Miner, let's take a look at some of the visual changes. If we compare the look of the game from a few years ago to what the game looks like now, there are a lot of striking differences. There is much better lighting, a lot more vegetation, and much better biome variety. But those are all things that I've covered in the past. One of the biggest changes that you've probably noticed is the new clouds. Originally, they were just 2D slices of 3D cubes. Later, I upgraded them to a more interesting 3D shape, which is the truncated octahedron. Just like cubes, they can tile 3D space, but they form what is a lot like the 3D equivalent of a 2D honeycomb. Now, 4D Miner has actual 4D clouds. Like the Jellyfish model, these clouds introduce a new 4D shape to the game, the omni-truncated 5-cell. These form what is essentially the 4D equivalent of a 2D honeycomb. These are made up of 10 truncated octahedra, which are the shape that the 3D clouds use, in addition to 20 hexagonal prisms. I think they make the game feel much more immersive, especially when you increase their size to the maximum height. The taller you make the 4D clouds, the more likely the game will be to lag, so I only recommend turning this setting all the way up if you have an amazing computer. After watching the latest 3 Blue 1 Brown video, I have another idea for 4D clouds that should be much less computationally expensive, but they will likely be a bit less poofy looking, so I will probably make them optional. Another huge change to the look of the game is the new terrain generation. Now the hills look a lot more natural instead of always being perfectly smooth. The same is true for caves, and the level of detail for caves can now be increased in the world creation menu. A lot of the terrain generation code has been replaced. Triangle found a much faster noise generator, which also removed most of the annoying pillars that used to show up in the game for some reason. Redyard, the owner of some of the most popular 4D Miner multiplayer servers, also helped with the terrain generation by writing some code that improved the distribution of biomes within 4D Miner worlds. The last major improvement to the terrain generation is the blending between biomes. In previous versions of the game, due to a major oversight on my part, the blending between biomes would get worse and worse the farther you went from the world's center. Not too far from spawn, it would actually be better if there was no blending between biomes at all. Now I've completely rewritten the biome blending code to not only be much faster, but also much nicer looking overall, and now it's consistent no matter how far out you travel. Another thing I've rewritten is much of the code for the UI. This made it possible for me to add signs to the game, and in the future it will allow me to easily create menus for interacting with other in-game entities, without having to completely spaghettify the game's code. The updated UI system makes it much easier to create menus in general, and it allows their content to be scaled based on the size of your display. There are also new features like pop-up menus, which allow me to add a lot more functionality to the game's regular menus without adding too much clutter to them. Probably the biggest UI change is the new system for handling text, which allows you to use pretty much any characters you want to in signs, as well as in the chat menu. The new text system wasn't just added to make the text look nicer and to allow for emojis. The main reason I redid the system for handling text was to support multiple different languages. Before I talk about how that works, I want to thank everyone who has submitted their own translations of the game. These translations have the potential to make 4D Miner available to a much wider audience, and they are greatly appreciated. So to everyone who has helped out with translating this game, thank you. We already have 14 different translations of 4D Miner, and everyone is free to submit their own translations or revisions to any of the existing translations. People who were unable to support the game through Patreon had been asking me since the first 4D Miner video if they could help out by providing their own translations, so I quickly realized that adding a translation system to the game had to be a priority. Supporting multiple languages is a surprisingly difficult problem to solve, because not every language has a simple alphabet like English. Originally, the game just used an image containing all of the letters of the English alphabet as its character sheet. This worked pretty well, but the spacing between letters didn't look very good, and it meant that I couldn't add translations for most languages unless I also added their alphabets to that image, and that's assuming all of the languages I wanted to support actually have alphabets. Languages like Chinese have tens of thousands of different characters, with many of them representing entire words, and I can't just include all of these in my sheet of characters. Other languages like Arabic or Hindi have characters that sort of change their shape as you type. Just watch what happens when I repeatedly hit backspace on this bit of text. If I tried to write code to handle all of this on my own, there's a pretty good chance I'd never be seen again. I ended up using a library called Pango to handle most of this stuff, which has been developed by several people for decades. It was still quite a bit of work to fully integrate it into the game, and to replace all of my old code, but this wouldn't have been possible at all without Pango. This illustrates a big part of the reason it sometimes takes me so long to release updates to this game. I'm not using a popular game engine to make 4D Miner. I've written the game from scratch, occasionally using libraries to handle specific tasks like networking and text rendering. Not using a game engine allows me to optimize 4D Miner for 4D rendering and 4D physics, which aren't things that any prominent game engine is designed for. Game engines usually have pretty much all of the stuff like physics, graphics optimizations, input handling, networking, and cross-platform support built right into them, which allows game developers to put pretty much all of their focus into just adding content to their games. When you want to make something that regular 3D game engines are not designed for, like Hyperbolica, 4D Golf, or even 4D Miner, it's a lot more difficult than usual to use a traditional game engine. Code Parade, the creator of both Hyperbolica and 4D Golf, was able to use Unity to make both games, but that doesn't mean it was easy. He has a lot of experience with Unity and had to come up with a lot of clever workarounds just to force the engine to do what he wanted. If you want to make a 4D game yourself, I would recommend using his Unity workarounds, which he has generously released to the public on GitHub as Engine 4D. I don't regret writing 4D Miner from scratch. I had a lot of programming experience, but no experience with any game engine, and I believe the flexibility of not relying on a game engine, coupled with my experience in C++, made it worth all of the extra work that comes with writing a game from scratch. Code Parade actually has experience with both writing a game from scratch and using an engine, and he left a pretty nice message in the 4D Miner Discord server where he talked about spending years on what sounds like a pretty awesome 2D game engine, and he doesn't regret working on that either. The more I work on 4D Miner's custom engine, the easier it is to add more features to the game. While I usually prefer to work on more challenging tasks, I've promised the patrons that after I release the update that roughly coincides with this video, I will not work on anything major like water or some big engine improvement for a while, and instead focus on adding a lot of much needed content to the game. And just a quick reminder, if you want to help support this game's continued development, you should consider becoming a 4D Hyper supporter on Patreon. Not only will you be helping out with this game's development, but you will also get access to the latest builds of the game and have the ability to provide early feedback. If you want to support this YouTube channel, leaving a like and hitting the subscribe button would also be really helpful. Before I talk about future plans for the game, I want to go over one last feature which will be a huge deal for 4D Miner moving forward, and that is the world version converting system. This system allows you to update worlds from older versions of the game to the current version, and it's designed to always work for worlds from any previous version, even the first release of the public demo from 2022. This works because every time the format for storing worlds is changed, a converter from the previous format to the new format will be added to a list of world version converters. If you try to open an old world from several versions ago, the game will just run the old world through each consecutive world converter until it gets to the current version. To ensure that this always works, the code for each world version converter is mostly isolated from the rest of the game's code, which means it's very unlikely that I'll accidentally break one of them in the future. As a failsafe, the game also includes an option to back up an old world before trying to update it to a newer version. That covers most of the big things that I've worked on since my last devlog. So what's next? Well, firstly, a lot of stuff I talked about in the last video. Along with that video, I made a poll on my Patreon asking if I should add water or seasons to the game first, and most of the patrons chose water. When I teased some of my future plans, like improved PvP, I didn't think I would be spending that much time on things like water or the UI system. I don't think I really underestimated the difficulty of implementing 4D water, but I did underestimate how ambitious I would end up being with it. When I started working on the liquid system, I quickly realized that a huge part of 4D Miner is the smoothly changing shapes that are the result of taking different 3D slices of a 4D world. I couldn't just make flowing liquids work like they do in other sandbox games like Minecraft, where a block will suddenly go from being empty to being full of either water or lava. 4D Miner is all about smooth transitions, so I felt like I had to figure out smooth 4D liquid animations in order to do the game justice. A lot of work went into just figuring out the flow mechanics, not to mention actually implementing them alongside their animations, and making sure everything is always synchronized. These flowing mechanics are by far the most complicated thing in 4D Minor, and there is still a considerable amount of work that needs to be done on them. I will probably be tweaking the code for liquids for a very long time. Now that I've promised not to make anything like this for a while though, I can focus on things that are easier to implement, like PvP, more audio features, new blocks, entities, tools, and biomes. I also want to implement something that is commonly referred to as volume view or ground view, which is really useful in 4D golf. As we've seen earlier, 3D worlds have 2D surfaces. In 4D games, the world has a 3D surface instead of a 2D surface. Volume view lets you explore this 3D surface a lot like you would in a regular 3D environment, but from the perspective of a 4D being, you're just lying on the ground. Imagine Frank doing the same thing in a 3D world, and then exploring that area as if it were a regular 2D environment. This ability can actually help a lot with understanding your 4D surroundings. In the 4D Minor Discord server, there's a suggestions channel where people can provide and vote on their own suggestions for the game. A lot of these have been building up over the past year, and even before that when I was putting most of my focus into adding multiplayer to 4D Minor. Now I plan on finally addressing some of the more popular suggestions in there. If you want to leave your own feedback for the game, I highly recommend joining the official 4D Minor Discord server. If you become a patron, you'll have access to at least one of the Patreon exclusive channels in the server, and I always give priority to the feedback I receive there. Regardless of whether or not you become a patron, most of the announcements and updates will be revealed in the Discord server. A lot of people who join are just wondering if the game is still being worked on, and that's probably because I haven't been posting videos as often. This is mostly because so far, my videos have done a lot better when I spend more time on them and have more interesting content to showcase. The better my videos do, the more attention 4D Minor gets, and the more I can continue to work on this game. If I spend too much time working on videos, that means I can't spend nearly as much time actually working on 4D Minor. Don't worry, I have no plans to abandon this game. Even after the final release on Steam, I want to continue updating 4D Minor indefinitely. Before I say anything else, I want to thank all of the patrons who make the continued development of 4D Minor possible. All of the new content in this video probably wouldn't exist without you, so thank you all so much for providing all of your support and feedback, as well as your patience. I also want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the channel. After my previous video, this channel hit the 100,000 subscriber mark, which is amazing. If you haven't subscribed yet, I think now is a great time to do so. 100k is a pretty big milestone, but the channel is only just over 10% of the way to the 1,000,000 subscriber mark, so you still have time to become one of the OGs. To wrap this video up, I want to plug a couple of other YouTube channels. The first one is Triangle's 4D modding channel, where he plans to upload modding tutorials for 4D Minor. The other channel is Ramder's channel, Ramder Plus. If you want to stay up to date with 4D Minor's development, you should be subscribed to his channel as well as mine. And as always, links to everything will be in the description.